Hello, and welcome to Perspectives with Pete. Perspectives of Pete. With Pete. I'm not sure yet. I'll figure that out later.
This is where I'm gonna put the intro.
Anyways, welcome. Thank you for coming here to watch the thing. The video. What is it? Oh, that's correct. Let's figure out what this is. We're doing a review tonight of The Invisible Life of Addie La Rue. Came out recently. Not entirely sure how recently, but just recently enough that it's still on the tube, as the kids would like to say. I don't know if the kids actually say that. I don't know what kids actually say. So the way I'm going to split it up tonight is into two sections. One is going to be maybe the first quarter to a third, and then the second part, which is going to be a little bit longer, is going to be the spoilery section. So the first part is going to be review, non-spoiler, hey, this is what it is type of deal. And then the second part is going to be fully spoiler, and that's what I like to call the fun part, because that's when I actually can either rant or rave about whatever. The rant or rave part. That's actually kind of catchy. I don't know if I'll use that. So let's get into the first part. So I really liked Addie La Rue. I finished it about 2 days ago. 2 days ago, yes. And let's just say it's about a girl who meets a boy. I mean, classic story. Except she's immortal. And she also can't be remembered by anybody. Like, so basically what happens is, like, you know, she meets somebody, says like, hey, you're cool, let's go grab a cup of coffee. And then they turn around. Hello, welcome to the Perspectives of Pete. Perspective with Pete. I don't know. Anyways, that happens. Where they just like, what? They don't remember her. Which is very interesting. And the author illustrates how that affects Addie's psyche over the course of the book. And she talks about how that affects her relationship with the boy. And of course, how she got it. She got it with a deal. She had a deal, classic Crossroads deal without the crossroads. She's actually, in a So the interesting about this book is, it takes place as a series of flashbacks coming back to present day. So Addie's making her way in present day, and then gradually you also see her life as she lived it, back from when she became immortal. And kind of the twists and turns that like this book takes you through, they're really fun. And I say fun, and really I mean painful, because this is a very emotional book. So, it was a bit of an emotional roller coaster, and I'll talk more about that during the spoilery part of it. The prose, absolutely great. Some of her descriptions just kind of put you there. I feel like that V.E. Schwab really put her heart and soul into this prose. I've read some of her other books, or I've actually only read one of her other books, Darker Shade of Magic, and I wasn't particularly impressed with the prose in that book. The characters were okay. The magic was very interesting, but the prose itself was kind of just like, okay. Put that in stark contrast to this book. You're just like, wow, she really worked her butt off to get this book to the place it is. And it paid off. It's beautiful. So she did really well with her prose, and if you like prose, so be warned. It's a sad story. It's a beautiful story. There is a little bit of there's a few scenes that are a bit risque, in the sense that there's if you know what I mean, in them. There also is one of the relationships portrayed in the book is a bit abusive, in the obsession sense, in the ownership sense. There's nothing like physical. It's more of a toxic than abusive. It's actually more toxic than abusive. Some people might say, what's the difference? Yeah, I don't know how to recommend books yet, so let's get into the fun part. Forgot to mention, I'm going to be putting a link down below to bookshop.org if you'd like to go and buy The Invisible Life of Addie La Rue. Bookshop.org supports local businesses, specifically bookstores, because that's who you're buying from. But yeah, help support local bookstores, especially in this time of COVID where most people aren't really wanting to go out and buying books. It's really convenient, and it helps those community bookstores that really make up the backbone of the book community, in my opinion. Thank you. So, spoilers. Spoiler warning from here on out. If you go any further, there will be spoilers. Let's talk about the two deals, because there's two. There's two deals. There's Henry's, there's Addie's. Addie's and Henry's situations are both uniquely relatable. Addie's situation is where she doesn't want to get married. She knows there's more to the world, and she wants to see it. She wants to explore. She wants to be free. And anybody I say anybody, but there are quite a lot of people out there that can relate to the whole, I want to be free and go do my own thing. That's a classic teenage realization. You realize it in your teenage years, and sometimes you grow out of it, sometimes you don't. Sometimes it hits you when you're 40 and you're stuck in a dead-end job. Who knows? But it hits people. So that in and of itself is relatable. And then she's like, I want to live. And she gains immortality. With a twist that she can't be remembered. And it's very interesting to see her character progress over time through the flashbacks, because you see her grow and evolve of like, oh my gosh, I can't. She lost her father's sculpture, and that kind of was a little bit of a breaking point for her, where she couldn't hold on to anything. She couldn't make a mark, and she discovered, like, she stabbed the guy and then he walked away and it healed. It's like, what? Imagine the lack of how, I guess, morally freeing that is. And I think she eventually goes into something like that at the end, where she's, during the war, they don't really touch on it, but like, she would make a really interesting interrogator, because she could go and interrogate somebody, just completely screw them up, like break both their kneecaps and yada yada yada, make them tell her what she wants to know, and then she can get up, untie them, and leave the room, and they won't even be injured anymore. That's kind of a dark way of putting it, but like, a dark path to walk. But it's so interesting tactical implications, outside of the fact that she would have to make all those decisions herself, and she'd have to be like, I'm gonna fight on this side of the war and help them. They're not gonna know I helped them. I think the issue is that she wouldn't be able to relay the information unless she told somebody else to write it down. I think she could, but she also learned she can steal, and that's how she can make her mark, by leaving nothing, which is good, because that means she didn't have to, wear the same clothes for 300 years, because that would be awkward. I mean, imagine the same situation, but like, she's wearing a dress from the 1700s, late 1700s, in the middle of New York. She'd get looks. She'd have to turn into a hermit, essentially. But she didn't, so she got to explore. She got to see things. Henry's curse is also very relatable, I think. You have, I just want to be enough. That's another thing that so many people have to go through on a day-to-day basis, that they want to be loved, and they feel like they aren't loved because people don't love them entirely for who they are. Like, they don't complete anybody. They always feel like they fall short of something. When in reality, they just need someone who's gonna love them where they are and start from there, because in reality, all relationships are growing periods. So if you're in a relationship with someone, more than likely you're gonna be growing in some way or form. That feeling of just wanting to be enough, you could find that at work. You could find that in kids that can't live up to their parents' expectations. You could find that in friends who put those expectations on you. You could find those in the media constantly. I mean, I feel like that's never ending with the media of putting standards before us that no one can live up to, and we just need to ignore because the media is stupid. And it's interesting, the interaction between the two, because of how Luke kind of planned it out, question mark, did he really plan it out? The interaction of the two curses canceled each other out, essentially. Henry's curse, who normally worked on someone else, basically it would change that person's mind so that they saw something different in Henry. Instead, this time it kind of backfired, because in order to be enough for her, he needed to remember her. So instead it backfired on him and changed his mind, which is not how it should have. I don't know, but it essentially changed his mind so he was immune to the curse. The magic interacted in a unique way, which is so fun to see. I think there might be a little bit of debate about, like, okay, did Luke purposely put that blind spot in there, or did he plan it all out? And I'm of the opinion that he did plan it all out, because when they were on the stoop and Henry was like, right before Henry was like, deal, Luke was just like, you're perfect, which is like, whoa. Like, at that moment, I was like firmly in the camp of Luke's planning to break Addie with this. There was a few times that kind of wavered throughout the rest of the book, but for the most part, I was still like, Luke's doing something with, he's messing with Addie. And in the end, I think he was. The world building in this was very subtle, which I appreciated. Like, she had a very soft magic system in this book. It was based around, curses and rules, but like, it wasn't very evident as to like where it got its power from. What were the consequences of breaking? Well, the consequences were sort of evident depending how you look at it, but where the power's from, how it explicitly works, because it could have very well, the magic could have come as a conduit through Luke versus Luke using the magic. I don't know. In my opinion, it was a very soft magic system. Another interesting aspect of Henry's curse is the fact of the effects, of course, the effects that it had on Henry. Slowly, all the relationships that he had turned sour because they were essentially empty. It's like you're forcing your friends to be nice to you, essentially. It's like when your mom, Billy is being mean to you, and then your mom tells his mom to be like, be nice to Mr. So-and-so. And now Billy's all nice to you because his mom said so, and he's faking it because he has to. It's that. So now Henry's put in the situation where he's just like depressed because everything's shallow, everything's fake. He realizes this, and then he meets Addie. She's like the person that doesn't have the film over his eyes, because his curse kind of backfired on him and changed his mind versus changing hers. It's like when he saw her face. That song, I don't have that much money to fork out real quick for a random reference. He finally found a relationship that someone could actually tell him, hey, you're screwing up, or something along those lines. In moderation, everybody needs criticism. And I say that because we all need to grow. We all need to change. Like, nobody's perfect. In order to grow, we need to have avenues for us to grow in our lives. And Henry didn't have that anymore. He was just stagnating. He was sitting in the bookstop, seeing this glint in people's eyes and knowing that it was fake. No one would, even his best friend, Bia, wouldn't tell him, oh, dude, you're stagnating. You need to go. You need to do something. You need to get out of here. Move on with your life. And losing that really put him in a bad spot. Especially when one of your best friends, like, just stops telling you when you're wrong, stops telling you that, oh boy, you shouldn't have done that. That's hard. Now, some people can ignore it. Very many people have learned to be immune to criticism by just ignoring it, which isn't healthy at all. Leads to polarization. In Henry's flashbacks, you could see the realization of, oh my gosh, I thought I had it all, but now I don't. It was interesting how that all played into Henry and Addie's relationship. So Henry and Addie's relationship, in my opinion, was actually a bit one-sided, I felt like, because Henry, knowing he had a year to live or so, was like, I have to do all these things to help her remember, help her leave a mark on the world. And he did all these things to the point that he got upset because he went on a date with her that wasn't at a place that she'd been before. At that moment when I saw that in the book, I was like, really, dude? Really? She had a fun time. Chill out. But he still got upset. It's like, oh my gosh, he needed to chill. He was doing all of these things for her, and she wasn't. I mean, in the end, she sacrificed for him. It was a noble sacrifice. I'm a sucker for noble sacrifices. So the service kind of evened out in the end. I should preface that with, it was one-sided because I felt like it was more of him serving her than like her serving him. Like it should be even. Because relationships are, you're serving your other half. It can be little things like breakfast. I mean, maybe there were little things that I kind of skimmed over in their relationship, like them making breakfast or something like that. It's not like I paid attention to who made breakfast every time, but it felt a little one-sided to me because he was doing all these big gestures and she was just excited that someone could write everything down. But again, it evened out with the sacrifice in the end. Luke and Addie's relationship. That was a piece of work. I really liked how Addie, like over time, Addie learned his moods and learned more about him than he knew about her. Schwab threw me for a loop for a second, like after the New Orleans thing, where she's like, you don't really love me. And he's like, yeah, I'm just playing around, messing and trying to break you. She threw me for a loop there because I thought that was true, and it wasn't. And I'm glad it wasn't, because that was interesting. I don't necessarily like the fact that she went with Luke in the end, but I love the way she did it. Like the way that she changed the contract and she went full lawyer and like changed the contract just enough so she could get out of it if she like made him hate her essentially over time. And I really liked that. I don't know if it would work though. I don't know. I think Luke could kind of go back on it and say your soul is still on the table, so I'm just going to take that since I'm tired of you. But it was a toxic relationship. It was based on him being possessive. And an obsession of possessiveness is never good in a relationship. I think when you get married, there's a certain level of, you made a covenant, you made a promise, you are, to a certain extent, owned by the other person, but it's a two-way street. And whenever someone gets over-obsessed with that, it starts becoming toxic. She obviously didn't own him. I also really liked, one final thing that I really liked, and this is going pretty long for a booktube video, Henry's basically memorial about her. Not a physical one, but like, publishing her stories. And, you get that one blurb in the beginning of the very last part where it's like, these pictures were all part of who is the real Addie La Rue. You can put the pieces together of, okay, first he wrote the book in the universe, which I think is a really cool thing. There's actually someone reading the book that there's someone writing the book that I'm reading right now. I always really like that in a book. And then you see that, it's become a cultural phenomenon of like, oh, this guy has this art and, he definitely went on to be a successful artist, you can assume. And you see the effect on the world. Like it's kind of like a 10 years later thing, which I do like in movies where instead of just saying, and they lived happily ever after, I like the movies that are like 10 years later, so this and this happened. Like I think they did at the end of the Little Rascals. This kid grew up and did this kid grew up and did this, yada yada yada. I like that. It gives a further sense of depth to the world. Just with the paintings in general and stuff, like seeing Addie's effect on the world, that gave it a real depth that I really enjoyed. And it was very subtle too. Let me know what your thoughts were down in the comments below. If you enjoyed my long spiel, give me a like with a thumbs up thingamajigger, and subscribe if you want to see more. I don't know if the notifications bell still exists. I've seen people talk about it, but go ahead and turn on those notifications if you want to catch every video that I come out with. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have a great rest of your day, night, sleep cycle, circadian rhythm, whatever. Have a great rest of it. Have like somebody who like, oh,